warmongers in bringing us into Iraq. And we seem to be experiencing the same exact thing now with Russia. Now, did Russian trolls, did Russian troll farms and what have you impact the election? Did they go out of their way from Russia to sow disinformation and propaganda and, fake Facebook pages and all the rest? Yes, they did. There's proof of that. How much it actually affected the election? There's no proof of that. Do we have evidence of some sinister plot where then candidate Trump and his campaign worked with the Russian government in order to hack Hillary Clinton's emails or the DNC's emails and pass it off to an outlet like WikiLeaks? There is no evidence of that, even though Rachel Maddow would like it to be so. There is no evidence of that at this point. But let me remind you, again, here was the headline. Here was the headline in the New York Times, March 20th, 2003. Bush orders start of war on Iraq. Missiles apparently miss Hussein. Just think about that for a second. We actually went to a war with a country that had absolutely nothing to do with 9/11, based on trumped-up intelligence. Literally, when they went to war, they were still looking for the weapons of mass destruction. And the same usual suspects that were pounding their chest on cable news and in the pages of the New York Times and all the rest are now going on MSNBC, now going on CNN, now going in the pages of the New York Times, pounding their chest for a new Cold War. A new Cold War. I heard John Heilman on Morning Joe this morning saying, this is Cold War 2.0. Well, for those of you that remember the Cold War, the country doubled the debt for that Cold War. Spent so much money on a Cold War with another country that it let our country go to hell in a handbasket as far as infrastructure, investment in schools, investment in healthcare, investment in jobs programs for people, investment in America went down the shitter so that we can build up the military-industrial complex, build up weapons, funnel money to defense contractors, and pound our chest against the communist threat. Well, I was born in the 80s, so I don't vigilantly remember that. But I'll tell you what I'm hearing on TV and what I'm reading in corporate media is having very, very deja vu sentiments to the Iraq War. Look at this clip from this morning on Morning Joe, which I watch so you don't have to. Here we go. Oh, never mind. Is it working? Share my screen. Stick with me for a second. Screen share. I guess that's not working. That's all right. Oh, hold on. There we go. Here we go.
And our elections.
Well, two things. I mean, I made the point because I want people to think about that word, right? The Soviet Union, they had elections too. I lived in the Soviet Union. I went to elections, but we never affirmed that kind of authority and legitimacy to Soviet leaders. Let's stop doing it with Vladimir Putin. By the way, their own people are saying the same thing. Margarita Simonyan, the head of RT, the Russia propaganda network, just called him a vozhd, a leader, instead of a president. So we should get our heads around that too. Secondly, I think think we're also confused about the time we're in. We compare it to the Cold War, and then we all say, oh, it's really not the Cold War, so we can relax. And I think it's time to start thinking about maybe it's worse than the Cold War. During the Cold War, at least in the last decades, the Soviet Union was not annexing territory in Europe. They weren't meddling in our elections, and they sometimes did assassinations, but they didn't do it in this brazen way that Vladimir Putin is doing it. He's daring us to challenge him, and because we don't want to think in those terms, that we don't want to follow a policy of containment, we continue to kind of dodge that question. And I think after today, we should begin to think that we're in for a long, sustained confrontation with Russia, and we need a foreign policy strategy, a strategy of the West, just like the United States, to contain Putin's Russia.
Okay.
Whoa. Well, you heard it. We are in for a long, sustained confrontation with Russia. And this is now worse than the Cold War. What exactly is worse than the Cold War? The fact that there is now cyber warfare, the fact that Putin was reelected. Granted, it wasn't much of an election. There was mass ballot stuffing. His opponent wasn't even allowed really on the ballot. But you see this pounding of the chest, this talk for war, this talk for more aggression all over the corporate media. It's like these people were not paying attention the last 2 decades now. It's like